Last year I made a video tutorial detailing the audio settings using Bias FX. Since I made that video, Bias FX 2 has been released, so in this video I'm going to show you how to use the audio settings in Bias FX 2. Hello, I'm Paul Douglas. If you're new here, then please consider subscribing to the channel by hitting that subscribe button down there and clicking the notification bell to get notified of when I post new videos. So I'm going to assume that you've already installed Bias FX 2. You install it just like any other Windows application. Just remember to tick the Install Standalone checkbox so you can use the program on its own as well as inside a DAW. So as you can see, I've got Bias FX 2 in standalone mode running here on my PC. One thing I'm going to show you straight away that I love that's in Bias FX 2 that wasn't in Bias FX 1 is this setting here, and that is the window size setting. So you can set it to 125% like I've got, or the standard size, or a lot bigger at 175%. I tend to have it set at 125%, so it's a bit bigger than the standard size. I tend to have it in that middle setting, the 125%, because when I'm playing the guitar standing up, I do tend to move around the room quite a lot. Okay, great. Let's go into the audio settings. So to do that, you click the gear icon and then click Audio Settings. And let's take each of these options in turn. The audio driver type, basically if you see something called ASIO here, ASIO, that is the one that you want to select. ASIO stands for Audio Stream Input Output. Basically it is a driver protocol specifically optimized for audio use on a computer. Now using this one, it will give you the best performance and the lowest delay, the lowest latency that you can get. Your audio interface will usually come with some of these audio ASIO drivers, or they'll have a link to the manufacturer's website where you can download them, and then they should show up in this menu. So whatever options appear here, if something says ASIO, then that will generally be the one that you want. Now, if you want to know how to connect your guitar to your computer using an audio interface, check out my tutorial video in the description below, or click on the card, which should show up somewhere here. Now, I cannot promise that your options here will look exactly the same as mine. Unless you have exactly the same audio hardware as me, they will look a bit different. Just for reference, I am using a Focusrite Scarlett 6i6 audio interface, but you should be able to work out the equivalents that I'm showing you here without too much trouble. Okay then, so onto output device. Now you can see mine is set to Focusrite USB audio. My Focusrite 6i6 interface is plugged into a USB port on my computer, so that's what I'm using here. You want to make sure here that you select an option specific to your audio interface, not a generic one, so not that one, and not something that says DirectX. If you see the name of the manufacturer of your audio interface, Focusrite in my case, then that is probably the one that you want to select here. You can see I've got two Focusrite options here, a Focusrite Thunderbolt and USB. I'm using USB, so that's the one I've selected. Thunderbolt is basically another type of computer hardware interface. If you're not familiar with it, I wouldn't worry about it. Okay, onto output. I've got so that's set to stereo, not mono. You can set it to mono if you want. I always have it set to stereo. The output channel, now these correspond to the physical audio outputs that connect to your speakers from your audio interface. Some audio interfaces like mine have more than one set of those stereo outputs. You can see mine actually has 3 pairs of those, and I've selected the ones that are connected to my speakers, which is outputs 1 and 2. And by doing that, that means I will be able to hear the sound coming out of Bias FX. Now we can test the sound, we'll actually test that we hear it by clicking this test button, and if I do that, you'll hear a beep. That's the test sound. If you're hearing that, then you know that you've set up your outputs correctly. Okay, let's move on to the inputs section. The input device options will look very similar to the output device options, so again I'm selecting Focusrite USB audio from those options. Again, avoid anything saying generic or DirectX here, use an option from your audio interface manufacturer. Now the input here, you can select mono or stereo. I always have this set to mono as this is a standard electric guitar I'm playing with a mono input from the jack socket on the guitar. Just like if I was plugging into a real guitar amp. Now the input channel, this corresponds to the physical interface, the physical input on your interface that you have your guitar plugged into. I have 6 inputs on my interface and my guitar is plugged into input 2. Now it's always worth checking this as I've accidentally set this wrong so many times and wondered why I'm not getting any sound. So you can actually check that BiosFX is receiving a signal from your guitar by playing something and checking that the input check meter here actually registers some sound. So there you go, you saw the little green bar go across on that meter, so I must have set up my inputs correctly. Okay, on to the last section. Now sample rate is how many digital samples in a second are used to process the sound. You can sort of think bigger the number, the higher the sound quality, but I've always set this to 44.1 kilohertz there, and the sound quality is absolutely fine for me. CDs are recorded using 44.1 kilohertz sample rate, so that tells you the sort of sound quality you can expect. Now more important is the audio buffer size. This controls the latency, i.e. the difference in time, the delay between when you play a note on your guitar and when you hear it coming out of BiosFX. Now 2.9 milliseconds you can see is the delay time I have there. Now that amount of time will be pretty much undetectable to the human ear, so it will appear that when you play the note the sound will come out of BiosFX at the same time, which is exactly what we want. Basically you want to get this value as low as you possibly can without hearing any audio glitches. Now that will depend on your system, your own audio interface, your drivers, how fast your computer is, etc. Experiment with different settings here to find out what works best for you and your system. We just briefly discussed that last option there, the MIDI inputs. You can control some of BiosFX features, switching between channels, etc. Using MIDI. I don't do that, so I'm not going to discuss that here. And if you don't know what that is, then I wouldn't worry about it. Okay, finally, like I did in the original BiosFX 1 settings video, I'm going to point out the tuner in BiosFX, which can be opened using this little icon here. It's fairly self-explanatory, you know, I play a note and then you can tune the note, goes green and it's in tune. Standard tuner operation, you can mute or unmute whilst you're tuning. And yeah, the whole thing is pretty self-explanatory, but one of the most important features of BiosFX 2. That's it. I hope you found this video useful. Thanks for watching. If you haven't yet subscribed to the channel, then please click that subscribe button down there and hit the notification bell to get notified of new videos. And don't forget to check out the links in the description below. Keep making music, and I'll see you again in the next video. Cheers.